Just seen a skunk on the path up ahead.
While the whales are protected from humans nowadays, they do face a new and rather unusual threat. Gulls. Argentina. To call the land of silver a great place to travel would be an understatement, and perhaps a little unfair on the rest of the world that isn't Argentina. This is the realm of cheap prices, Iguazu Falls, beautiful cities, and Patagonia. And at Patagonia's northern end is one of its highlights. Peninsula Valdes. This quasi-island is home to a diverse array of animals that draw visitors from all over the world. This peninsula is but a small area in the vastness of Patagonia. What is it about this area that makes it so special for wildlife? Two bays on either side of the thin strip of land that connects it to the mainland give it a rather bulbous shape. And yet it's this unusual shape and proximity to the Atlantic Ocean that makes it a favoured breeding ground for its most famous resident, the southern right whale. The calm, sheltered waters of the Golfo Nuevo are the perfect spot for these gentle giants to give birth, away from the stormy waters of the Atlantic. They generally grow to about 15 metres in length, with a width of 5 metres, which would cover approximately 0.0000, that many zeros, 36% of whales. You're very welcome. You might be wondering how this animal got its name. As some of the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed, this is a type of whale. As for the other parts, this is its distribution, and the right part was coined by whalers. This particular type of whale lingers about at the surface, often approaches boats curiously, and floats when dead. It was the right whale to hunt. As a result, populations were almost decimated. Demand for whale oil to illuminate the streets of Europe and power its industries, sound familiar, sent whalers far and wide, including to the coastlines of Argentina. A ban on whaling in the 1970s saved the species from extinction, and its numbers rebounded, especially around Peninsula Valdes. At the peak of calving season, there's a third of the world's southern right whale population concentrated into the bay. And it shows, quite literally. My boat had barely left the harbour before it had already come across a mother and calf. These tours are strictly regulated to protect the animals' welfare. The boats get to within 200 metres and then cut their engines so as not to disturb the animals. And the whales repay in kind. Despite centuries of whaling, their curious nature hasn't been compromised in the slightest. Nor is the fact that there are roughly 5 whale watching agencies in town, each doing roughly 4 sailings per day. Going out on a boat is not the only way to see whales. Standing atop the cliffs of the aptly named Mirador de Ballenas, one can see them surfacing every few minutes, sometimes with multiple in view at a time. What a fantastic way to watch the sunset. The whale's future isn't entirely secure. While the whales are protected from humans nowadays, they do face a new and rather unusual threat. Gulls. These birds have learned to use their sharp beaks to pierce the poor whale's back as it surfaces, and grab a mouthful of protein-rich blubber. An explosion in gull population in the 90s due to rubbish dumps created a few innovative individuals, and attacks became more frequent, with almost a quarter of surfacings drawing them in. While the attacks themselves don't outright kill the whales, this is death by 1,000 cuts. Beyond the risk of infection, the pain this inflicts means scientists have recorded a third of whales' time being spent on evading these attacks. Because gulls tend to attack mothers and calves for some reason, this evasive action means calves are becoming more and more malnourished. Argentinian authorities initially came up with a plan to shoot any gulls that exhibited this behaviour. For the time being, it has been shelved, instead replaced by measures to control the number of open-air rubbish dumps. The situation continues to be monitored, and whale populations are increasing, but in any case, the money brought in by tourism means that any and all threats to the whales continue to be taken seriously. Puerto Piramides is the gateway town to Peninsula Valdes, the launch pad for whale watching, and a lovely place to stay in its own right. It's well set up for tourism, with a beach that happens to be full of friendly dogs and a selection of nice cafes and restaurants, including what may have been the best coffee I had in Argentina. Crime is non-existent, and everything is clustered around its main avenue, ending with a roundabout with a whale statue. All the whale watching agencies are here, and true to the whale theme, someone was even reserving their parking space with a bit of whalebone. Whales aren't the only attraction in Puerto Piramides. On the way to Mirador de las Ballenas, I had a bit of a surprise.
Just seen a skunk on the path up ahead. It's gone into the bushes. I'm just going to move very slowly. And actually, you know what, I might start speaking up a bit because I actually want this thing to know I'm here. I want it to be able to walk away. I'm very sorry to disturb you, mate, but I really don't want to get sprayed on by you. And I don't think you want to waste good spray on someone who means you no harm, so let's all be friends here. Okay. I don't think it's around here. I'm just going to take this very slowly because it was moving away from me, but I don't really know how these things behave. Whether they would just sit and wait and go, ah! Or whether they would actually, you know, try to walk away from you first and only use it as a last resort. Logic says it is the latter. But I don't want to be the first to find out.
Well, fortunately I didn't get any doses of cologne that day, but my hostel's owner told me they are quite common in the scrub around town, so do keep your eyes out. This is not an animal you'd want to stumble upon. I continued up the Mirador where one can get an amazing view of the sea lion colony below. Not to bring the conversation back to Wales too soon, but one evening, one had come quite close to the sea lions. They seemed to be playing with it, or possibly harassing it. I'm actually really not sure on this one. Google had literally no answers. Perhaps a marine biologist can help me out. While you can see a huge amount in Puerto Piramides itself, in order to experience the peninsula in full, you'd need to get out to the east coast. There are 3 sites one could potentially visit, but Peninsula Valdes is the best of the bunch for seeing all the peninsula's highlights in one. If you don't have a car, the only other way to get there is by tour or hiring a transfer, and as I was in the same boat as some other travellers in my hostel, we were able to split the costs. On the way to these sites on the east coast, there are some salt pans, and these are the lowest point in South America. If you keep your eyes out, you might spot small groups of Patagonian cavies. As the name suggests, these are in the same family as guinea pigs, but the resemblance is far off. These rodents walk on long legs, and when they feel threatened, bound about on them in the same style as a llama. Speaking of llamas, one can find their wild relatives here in the hundreds. When alarmed, they neigh like a horse in Scarper. Though this particular group seemed a little curious about me, since I was on the bike at the time. Once you reach the coast, the first site you'll visit is a colony of Magellanic penguins. This species nests in burrows, safe from predators. Each individual mates for life, and makes its nest at the spot where it itself was hatched. When the breeding season ends, they'll migrate to the warmer waters of Brazil. But while they're here, they're a huge hit with visitors, often sitting within selfie distance. Fun fact about me, I think The Trials of Life and its killer whale beaching scene may have been the first ever David Attenborough documentary I ever watched. In short, this involves the beast launching itself out of the water to catch unsuspecting sea lions, and thrashing its body to get back into the water. Needless to say, I learned very early on that nature can be brutal. Anyway, Peninsula Valdes is the place to see that scene in person. In theory, that is. They don't make an appearance every day, even in season, and I wasn't lucky enough. Hence why I've been talking over a stock photo this whole time. Ah well, c'est la vie. From atop the cliffs along Caleta Valdes, visitors are able to view the lumbering elephant seals down below. For the most part, they don't do much except lie around. We did see some confrontations between males down below that seemed to involve one advancing for a few seconds, and lying down for a few minutes, another, presumably the current beachmaster, doing the exact same, until one, usually the trespasser, gave up and scarpered into the water. Despite the elephant seal's reputation for ferocity, The majority of the time, one male or the other will know when they're outclassed, and avoid any bloodshed. Puerto Madryn is the closest airport to Valdes, and this town itself doesn't have a huge amount to do. Though, it does have a nice pier, from which I saw my first sea lions and whales off in the distance. Also, I stayed with a lovely couple with whom I had dinner, and who taught me how to make empanadas. Shout out to Oscar on our Airbnb. If you want to book with him, I link to his listing in the description. Another option is Trelew, a city that has some nice paleontology museums if you're into dinosaurs, and a town full of Welsh heritage on its periphery called Gaiman. After a month of being roughly 7,000 miles from my homeland in Argentina, and another in Brazil before that, I was feeling a tad homesick. It should be said that I have no connection to Wales, but nonetheless, the red brick houses and Celtic music that plays in the shots made it close enough to home. Before I knew it, my time in the Valdes area was up, and it was time to move on to the next part of my trip. I was honestly a little sad to leave Puerto Piramides in a way that I've not felt for any other location on my trip. Truly, a place animal lovers in Argentina would miss at their peril.